Students enjoy small class size, close relationships with faculty, and immersive study. Wesleyan.edu/summer. You're listening to 88.1 FM WESU Middletown, a community service of Wesleyan University. Up next is The Business Buzz with Jeff Sherman, taking a look at innovative and cool technology and businesses right here in Connecticut. Catch The Business Buzz each and every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. as part of our Monday through Friday 4 p.m. local talk block, only on 88.1 FM WESU Middletown.
The Business Buzz on WESU is proudly sponsored in part by Carlson and Demir, located right here in downtown Middletown. Carlson and Demir providing legal representation for victims of serious injury and for those facing criminal charges. On the web at carlsondemir.com, 860-819-1034.
And welcome to another edition of The Buzz. Dr. Lopkin, that could be changing, correct?
Yeah, we'll be changing over to the new Carnivore Radio brand.
Taking in, the tagline is
getting to the meat of the matter.
There you go. And we're graced with Dr. Lopkin and Chris Calandra, who's been away for a while. And Chris, I'll throw it at you. It's our pledge drive. We only have $13,000 left to go. And tell me why WESU is important to you and why people must go to WESU, click on the donation tab, and make it happen.
Because as we talk about on the show, most of the news that we are served is nationwide in nature, and it's very vanilla. You could turn on one channel or the other channel. They're basically covering the other stuff. With community radio here at WESU, you get a wide variety of programming. It's local, it's ties to the community, and it deserves to be supported. Additionally, you have Wesleyan University helping students in the radio station, getting experience on air.
Yeah, we had
That'll
two
serve
interns.
Them well.
Yes, it was great. So I think that's very good, Chris. Good job, well done. And Dr. Lopkin, your view on all this?
Well, I
know the lever came off in your hand the other week. But
well, I think community radio is the only place where you're going to get beyond the soundbite. You know, when we talk about an issue, we really go deep. You're not going to get that on standard commercial radio.
Agreed. And how do listeners donate?
They can go to wesufm.org and hit the Donate Now button.
Well, Chris, I have something. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I have something to throw out to you first, then Lopkin. Speaking of mainstream media, do you know that, remember, well, you probably, I don't know, I think maybe Lopkin was here. It was years ago, and I must admit when I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. I thought CNN was going to be victorious because I thought at that time they were middle of the road, and I thought with MSNBC and Fox, you had a good, let's say, target market of being the neutral arbitrator of news. CNN elected, by the way, you see this in business. They have the same retreads. I've seen it in business. Even though they fail, just because they're at a certain position, they get rehired. Who is the head, the CEO of in charge of programming for CNN?
Jeff Zucker.
Yeah, a complete doofus. Okay, you could have Chris. Could you walk into CNN and make radical changes immediately and exponentially help their ratings?
Sure. I mean, one of the first things I would do is sign up Carnivore Radio. And,
There you go.
There you go. I mean, and you're on the roll from there.
So, Anderson Cooper, love the guy. Yeah, great. Okay, whatever. Kind of watching paint dry, but they have him for 2 hours and so on and so forth. So, Chris, here's the question. Do you know that they've actually gone just berserk? They're worse than MSNBC now, okay? Their ratings are plummeting. Do you know that?
Their ratings are plummeting, and I saw this statistic that I can't pronounce his last name. Is it Avenatti, the attorney that represents Stormy Daniels?
Yeah.
He was on CNN 59 out of 60 days in a row. It's just how much of that can you
Yeah, no.
take
Even if you're
and
in
tune in and watch?
even if you're in the tank in the resistance, Lopkin, how much can you watch? I mean, it does lose. Even if you're in the tank as a hard leftist, eventually you get to the point of this is like dribble, isn't it? I mean, even if I was watching a conservative venue, let's say, and they kept on saying, why Trump's the greatest thing ever and why Obama was the worst ever. Okay, after like an hour, I'm kind of like done. Thank you.
Right. Even if you agree with what they're saying, hearing it over and over and over again, it's like you can't do it. You turn them off.
Well, we invite our listeners to chime in. Again, it's our donation pledge drive, 860, if you want to call in and join the discussion. But if you want to donate, go to WESUFM.org, WESUFM.org, and click the donation tab. And as like always, gentlemen, the views of the Buzz/Carnivore Radio is not the views of the show. I should say it is the views of the show, not the views of WESU or Wesleyan University. So, Chris, I'm going to throw this out to you first. Talking about, what's going on with the Never Trumpers and the resistance, what, in your terms, you're a smart guy, what is the resistance at this point about? And I invite our listeners to call in, and you can chime in as well if you'd like to articulate 860-685-7700, 685-7700. And the question is, let's say a year plus into the Trump term, what exactly are we resisting?
I think at the core...
Is it full employment?
I think at the core it's resistance that Donald Trump managed inexplicably. It was a long shot that he won the election, and they're resisting the fact that he won the election.
Good point, Dr. Lopkin.
I think Chris is right. I mean, when we went into the election, the Democrats, the left, basically looked at it as a coronation of Hillary Clinton.
Oh, they were just going through the motions. So they could actually be, to some degree, and I use S, capital S, some degree, the neutral arbitrators, because if you already thought something was in the bag, you can at least pretend that you're going some back and forth.
Right.
But then it's really funny. Lester Holt, Chris, I don't know if you saw this, but he actually, when the results actually came in, he actually went... And then was named Tapper, Jay Tapper, literally had Freudian slips going, we need this, we need California, we need, and he goes, she needs, so kind of very interesting. But the point is, what, again, is the resistance all about? And how do you stack that up against what's going on in terms of the last 16 months?
Well, if I could throw this out, because it ties into CNN and what you're speaking about now, would it surprise you to know that CNN ran a poll, and the optimism in the direction of the country, so they basically asked people, you think the country's on the right track, wrong track kind of thing. We're at an 11-year high. 57% of Americans said the country's on the right track, including 40% of Democrats. So what we hear in the media, what you see on the news, is not, in my opinion, representative of what most Americans are thinking about. They are optimistic because the economy is performing and things are pretty good right now.
Do you think it scares the left? Because, let me ask you a question. First you, then Lopkin. What is the retort? What is the countervail balance for the Democratic Party or the left? As far as I know, I don't think they really have much to say besides resist.
It's personal attack to tear him down. The investigation over things that happened well before he was elected president, well before the campaign, well before he was a politician is a great example of that. They're going to dig down deep and personally try and tear him down because on the direction of the country and the performance of the economy, and he's on the verge of perhaps a great international success in North Korea. It's not a definite, but it certainly looks promising. They have very little to resist effectively on, so it's all personal attacks.
Let me ask you both, gentlemen, first, you Lopkin, then Chris. If he pulls out at least even a marginal victory in North Korea, could it be game over for the midterms? I think it is.
I don't know if it's game over, but it becomes much more difficult for the Democrats.
Here's why I think it is game over, first you, then Chris, is because Trump is about 50% in the polls. I think that's soft. I believe he's really greater than that because people have the Trump. They're scared to say that they're supportive of Trump. So I think it's more like 55%. And I think that as time goes on, I think Trump has time on his side because as you're doing better, people have gotten jobs, you feel better. Do you really care about the resistance?
For the most part, I don't think so, but there are pockets where,
well, in California, who cares?
Well, I mean, certainly California's never going to go for Trump. And there's certain other pockets that are also going to be the same way. But the problem is the media, because when you're inundated with, oh, he's terrible, oh, nothing's going right, oh, it's bad, despite the fact that they're absolutely lying about it, there are people who are going to believe it. So I do think there's still that slim chance that the Democrats will pull it off. But, again, it gets harder and harder for them.
Chris, I'll ask you a question. It's kind of a psychological question. I think crying wolf too many times can actually backfire. Like, sure. It's awful, it's awful. And people start saying, wait a second, it's not all that awful. Don't they start could it have a counter effect?
I think that's very true because I had dinner with an associate of mine who is very liberal, and we have a good relationship despite our differences, but he literally said Donald Trump has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And when the media talks along those lines, how are you going to explain the economy performing well? How are you going to explain North Korea? How are you going to explain that black unemployment rates are the lowest they've ever been? How do you square that? So people are hearing what they're hearing from the media, but day to day, the good news is still there, especially economically. So how is the public going to come to terms with this disconnect between what they hear when they turn on the nightly news and the fact that their job prospects are pretty darn good?
Yeah, I'd say so. And let me ask you a question first, in Lopkin. Talk about the resistance. Is it now the modus operandi of the left to shut you down and to shut forces they're not in agreement with, just to shut it down? So you get a duly elected president, Donald Trump. You like him or you don't like him, but in the old days, you'd wait for the next election. Is it now that the left shuts down speech on campuses, shuts down speech where they don't like it, attacks, destroys people that they find objectionable? Aren't they doing the same thing to Trump with the Mueller investigation? Isn't that the same thing, that he lost an election, so you need to take him out?
Yes.
Any means possible.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out. I don't know if you guys saw this. Kimberly Strassel in the Wall Street Journal wrote an article yesterday that there are increasing reports coming out that there was a U.S. citizen, non-government agent, U.S. citizen that was on the payroll of the FBI that was interacting with the Trump campaign, indicating that before the election, the FBI was in fact spying on the Trump campaign. This hasn't gotten proven yet. It's a little speculation, but it seems to me it's close to coming out that that's actually what happened, which is jaw-dropping. And that shows, Jeff, that, the forces against this outsider candidate, Donald Trump, were arrayed before him in a very strong way, even before he was elected. It's not just a coup. It started before he was elected.
I would agree, and I also think we have a caller, but I do really believe that they're scared that the emperor has no clothes, meaning look, in a little over a year, he's basically economy's reversed, because I know, last week we talked about, it was a carryover from Obama. I don't believe that at all. I think Obama's had a malaise in the economy. I think Trump corrected foreign affairs, all these things. So I guess, when you look at that, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, let's see what our caller has to say. Caller?
Hi. I don't know if you gentlemen have heard, there was a press conference today where Donald Trump presented a plan to look into big pharma.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I posted that on social media, and I said, I voted for Bernie, but I think that this is a good thing. Big pharma has, deep pockets, and they've paid both sides, one of the largest lobbying groups in the nation, and I got blasted. You're a Trump supporter. You're a Trump supporter. You're, you aren't for the people. I'm like, of course I'm for the people. I'm like, do you know that some drugs have gone up 5,000%?
Oh, yeah, no, big pharma is no better than drug dealers, really.
But, they just totally shut me down. And one person said, oh, how can you support him? He's a liar. I'm sure he's making money off of this. And I said, I don't really care about that. I think the fact that they're even discussing this, is a good thing for the United States.
I agree with that. But at the root of this, why are people so animated about Trump? Now, as a person, I think he's highly flawed, to be quite honest with you. I think there's no question. I mean, there's a billion things. The way I see it is, I'm not his friend. He's not my friend. I don't care. So I don't care about his personal life. But what is this? I've never seen this hyper vigilance. I mean, it's vicious. Yeah. But what is it about? It's got to be about. It's got to be. Everything has a root cause. What is going on here? Here's one thing I think. Here's one opinion I have is, I think, okay, the left is left, but I think a lot of the, let's just say, establishment are scared to death of an outsider. Now, Trump gives him a lot of ammunition, but any outsider, even Bernie to some degree,
right,
would have been disassembled as well, because he threatens the power base, the entrenched power base that's really over the last 60 years has brought us into endless wars, big deficit, and pretty much screwed up a country, correct?
Exactly. And, when they're saying, oh, you're against America, you're against the people on Obamacare, I said, I'm not against people on Obamacare, but opening up the conversation is huge. Obama didn't do this. The Democrats haven't done this. Just to even have a dialogue and a possible investigation into this is great. There's people out there that are going without life-saving medications because they can't afford them, even with insurance.
So,
I mean, when, a drug goes from being $10 or $25 a month up to $800 a month, something's wrong.
I agree. Chris has a question. Chris has a question.
So,
for
caller, I appreciate your intellectual honesty. That even though you may not have voted for Donald Trump before, and you may not even be a Trump supporter today, the fact that you could say on this particular issue, I think his comments, if not his actions, are a good idea, is healthy intellectual integrity. Because what blows me away is that if Bernie Sanders, who's still in the Senate, had come out and made comments similar to what Donald Trump said today, those same people that are going after you would celebrate Bernie Sanders because it is a good idea, but because it was their guy, they're in favor of it. If it's not their guy, they have to attack.
Yes, and attack you personally, that you don't care about your fellow Americans. And I responded, I do care about my fellow Americans. I said, you need to get out of the political muck that you're in and open up your eyes and see that this idea could be a really good idea. But just because it came from Trump and the Republican Party or whatever, his cabinet, the swamp that they're saying is, not being cleaned out or whatever, it's a good idea. And it needs to be a bipartisan idea, and people need to really look at it, but they're refusing. They're refusing because it came from Trump.
Let me ask you a question before you throw it out to Lopkin. Here's what I think. Here's at least a theory. I think that there could be a pushback of all this. People like yourself who are obviously, didn't vote for Trump, but, they may like some, positive aspects of what he's doing. Not everything, but some positive. aren't people going to get sick of this whole kind of attack mode psychology that anything he does, he could have $100 bills falling from the sky, but no, that's awful because he did it. Isn't it getting a little old? For me, I think it's getting a little old.
Yes.
What do you think?
And they would have said that those $100 bills he printed or something. I don't know. But I don't agree with all the stuff he says. I don't agree with a lot of stuff he says. But, he is running the country. He was elected fairly, even if I don't like it, even if most people don't like it. If people had given out the vitriol to other people for Obama winning or Bush or Clinton, people would be calling them out on the carpet.
No, you actually you have accolades for doing it. And my last question before I throw out to Dr. Lopkin, what do you think of the Mueller investigation? For me, I think that's the entrenched power base trying to have basically force a duly elected president on basically trumped up. I mean, it went from collusion, now it's Stormy Daniels. It's essentially a way to undermine his power. And then for the Democrats to talk about impeachment, that's a slippery slope. If you're impeaching someone over nothing, what happens when a Democrat gets in? I mean, you can basically undermine our whole democracy, can't you?
Of course. You can't say anything. You can't do anything or be anything. It's funny because one person said, can't wait for the blue wave in 2018. And even CNN just reported 2 days ago that the blue wave has turned into a blue trickle.
Oh, I don't think I really think that the Democrats are scared. You know what? Because I think it was a blue wave 3 months ago. Now it's low tide and it's trickling onto the shore. People
are getting tired of it. I quite frankly don't care that he had an affair or money's got paid. I mean, if you can't, Bill Clinton was the granddaddy of predators.
Yeah, he was an actual predator. With Clinton, it wasn't about sex. He was, it's really funny before out to Lopkin. It's like, at the time, I'm like, oh, come on, boys will be boys. But then the more I know about it, it wasn't about sex with Clinton. He had some real issues. He was twisted.
But listen, women are defending Bill Clinton now, saying, oh, it was an affair, and she knew what she was getting into.
No, that's not true.
In 2018, women who voted for Hillary, who stayed with this guy, all these years when she said she wasn't going to bake cookies for him and not stand by her man, meanwhile she did, and let all of this go on. He's currently being sued by two of his interns at his presidential library.
I didn't know that.
Trying to play footsie with them. And he was literally a predator. She was 21 years old, an intern. He was her boss. And if you discard what happened there as a Me Too movement, then you can't believe anyone coming out now as a Me Too movement either.
I would agree. Dr. Lopkin, any comments, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, we're talking about how everybody's looking at these issues through the filter of who's saying it. And we talked about this a number of weeks back where there's a video on YouTube where people in Greenwich Village were interviewed about the Trump tax plan, and they were all against it. It was terrible. It was a corporate giveaway. And then they asked the same people. They said, "Well, Bernie Sanders has put together a plan of his own," and they gave the details of the Trump tax plan. And because they thought it was coming from Bernie, that's fantastic.
Chris, do you have a final question?
Yeah. Someone said they have the blinders of hatred on.
So my question is when is she going to get her own radio show?
There you go. You're awesome.
She's outstanding.
Outstanding. No. Excellent. No, he's saying it as a compliment. I think you were a great job. And I want you to call in again and have a great weekend.
Thanks. You too. Have a great weekend.
Take care. So kind of interesting. And again, this is our pledge drive. You got to go to WESUFM.org, click the donation tab, and donate, because we don't get that kind of discussion, Dr. Lopkin, on regular traditional radio.
No, you really don't.
No, you don't. Very interesting discussion. Chris, your comments.
Yeah, so you mentioned the tax cut, Eric, is few statistics for you. Tax revenues this April over last April jumped 13%. We're 7 months into the fiscal year for the federal government, and revenues are up 4.3%. Individual tax revenues from the individual tax code are up 11.5%. So,
even in Connecticut.
In Connecticut, individual taxes are up $2 billion.
So reducing taxes, restructuring the tax code does not mean it's a giveaway for the rich. If you judge it and look at it through the prism of, is the government, the Connecticut government or the federal government, bringing in more revenue?
No question.
And the federal government's bringing in way more revenue than they used to.
Well, and before you take the caller, Nancy Pelosi is probably pretty much there's signs of senility. Literally said, "I'm taking away the tax cut." Not a great thing to say.
Go run on that, and good luck, Nancy.
Good luck. So we do have a caller. Caller, are you there? Oh, it helps if you do the right thing. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. So I'll throw in my 2 cents.
Chris, I think this is your buddy.
Yeah, we're pals.
Well, good. Chris is going to handle it.
Okay, perfect. So I honestly find it a little offensive that you guys are still stuck on this crazy notion that the Mueller investigation and this vitriol towards Trump is based on the fact that he won and Hillary lost. I mean, that is the weakest argument I've ever heard, and I'm astounded that you guys are still sticking with that story, but apparently that's where you're at.
I didn't want to. Chris insisted.
Given that the House investigation already found no wrongdoing.
The House investigation found no wrongdoing, but the House investigation perhaps was a bit biased, don't you think? Because the Mueller investigation has found, and first of all, we don't know what he's found because he's still investigating.
He's
but we
found
do know 24
nothing.
People have been 24 people have been implicated. 9 have been 4 have pled guilty. So how do you say nothing?
And none of those people pled guilty to anything that had to do with the campaign. It was all other things. It was one was he didn't report that he was doing business with a foreign government. None of the guilty pleas has had anything to do with the campaign. And now, when you listen to the Democratic pundits on MSNBC, CNN, they are all saying, well, we're going to have to deal with him for another 6 years, which means they've already decided there isn't enough to impeach him. They're not going to be able to get him out, and he's going to be reelected.
Let's see what Chris has, because I want a kumbaya moment. It's a reunion. It's like a Beatles reunion. Go ahead, Chris.
So thanks for calling in. So what's your opinion? We asked this last week. I know Eric wasn't in studio. If you grade the president this far in, total score, foreign policy, domestic policy, leadership, all of that, what score would you give him? My good friend Marty gave him a D-. What score would you give President Trump at this point through his presidency?
I think we're looking at the most corrupt presidency in the U.S. history.
That's not a grade, though, but that's not really a grade.
Because it's so low, you can't grade it.
All right, so you give him an F-?
F-.
So I give an F-. And let me tell you this, is that there's always going to be the 25 or 30%, which your libertarian views generally will fall into.
Yeah.
Because the day Richard Nixon left office in disgrace, 25% of the American public still supported him. That is the rock bottom that will support damn near anything. So that's where we're at with regards to Trump's base. With regards to the Mueller investigation, we don't. You're jumping. That's speculation.
Don't you think if you had 18 months or a year, isn't that when is it enough time? Is enough time? 3, 5, 7 years?
I'll answer that for you. Let me answer that for you. Is that Watergate took 2 years. Mm-hmm. Benghazi took about 6 years. Whitewater took about 7 years.
Oh, by the way, I was totally against Whitewater.
I didn't hear you got.
I was totally against Whitewater. I think that was another BS independent council. It started out as Travelgate, then Whitewater, then it morphed into Monica Lewinsky.
Be it as it may, it took about 6 to 7 years. And in the 6 years of Benghazi, not one person was implicated, indicted, or charged. But I didn't hear anybody from the libertarians say, oh, wait a minute, we've gone too far. We need to end this. Watergate took 2 years. We're 14 months into this, and you guys are already clamoring to shut it down, in spite of the indictments, the guilty pleas, and the evidence we don't know that he has yet.
Well, I like that, and you know something?
So explain that to me.
There's
Explain
no
it to me.
explanation. We'll have to see how it
Exactly.
unfolds, and I'm going to send Donald Trump your report card. Thank you very
Good
much.
luck in November, because it's going to be a long, dark night for you guys.
Thank you very much. It's a great weekend, except for Saturday's going to be raining, so you can walk and think about how he'll be impeached, and the blue wave will take hold.
So
Hey, let me just throw in one quick thing.
Go ahead.
The previous caller was talking about Clinton and sort of conflating the two or comparing the two with Trump. Let's keep in mind, which you guys failed to mention, is that Clinton was impeached.
And he shouldn't have been.
No,
should not
I'm
have
not
been.
saying he shouldn't have been. I'm saying he was.
I know, but he shouldn't have been. It was ridiculous then, and it's ridiculous now. Have a great
Okay.
weekend, my
Have a
friend.
good weekend.
Take care.
So, Eric, last week after the show, I playfully teased Marty. He gave Donald Trump, who I'm a supporter of, a D-. But I actually, if he was here, I'd give him a hug because it's way better than the F- he just got.
And let's see what maybe some other callers would have to say at 860-685-7700, 860-685-7700, 685-7700. We're talking about the Mueller investigation, about the potential petering out of the blue wave. What else are we talking about, Dr. Lopkin?
Oh, we're talking about the entire resistance, presidents to the presidency.
I'd love to get a caller. I'd love to get a caller, and he or she can articulate what they're resisting. That would be. Wouldn't that be great?
I would love to find out, because you have unemployment at the lowest point since the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
You now have as many open jobs as there are people unemployed.
First time since 2000. Yes.
First time since 2000.
How about the foreign policy? Would you compare and contrast, Chris, Obama's foreign policy to the 18 months of Trump?
Well, I think you'd have to give Donald Trump at the core an incomplete, but certainly he has kept his campaign promises, and he's
How about our stature around the world?
Yeah, he's disrupting the previous presidency's policies around the world, from the TPP to how we're going to handle North Korea with his bellicose language earlier this year. He is doing things absolutely differently than
How would
his
you grade
predecessor did.
Obama on foreign policy?
I would give it a C+.
I would give it a D. What would you give it, Lopkin?
I'd give it a C-.
It was an abject failure. No,
the thing is,
name
though,
one success of Obama.
He got Osama.
That was okay.
That's about
That's
it.
huge. But
Yeah,
also, he didn't get us into any foreign entanglements. He didn't really.
All right, I'll give you
Things
that.
didn't get better, but we didn't have a lot of
No,
our.
but it did get worse, because ISIS came to power under his.
That was the JV team.
That was the JV team, which, by the way, 5 ISIS leaders were taken into custody just 2 days ago. So we've got ISIS, finally defeated, essentially. We've got the potential end of the Korean War.
Well, let me ask you a question about it.
70 years, we're finally going to see an end to this, possibly.
If Trump comes out with some kind of an agreement, and let's say he gets the Nobel Peace Prize, okay, because Obama got it for showing up. Does Jake Tapper have a heart attack on the air?
Probably.
Would he have CPR, do you think, Chris?
His head might just pop off, like in the cartoons.
Wouldn't you love to hear from a listener that's entrenched in the resist movement?
I would, yes. I'd like to find
Chris,
out
would you like to?
What is going on and why they're so offended by him, despite the fact that he's actually doing quite a number of good things.
Yeah, what in fact is bothering you? Then that's the question. Like, what is it? Chris, maybe you can help me out. What, besides being a personally highly flawed person, which has no effect on me at all, what are you so up in arms about the current administration?
I think it's that he comes off, and in many ways he is a jerk. And
okay, but I know a lot of jerks. That doesn't mean I'm having a aneurysm about it.
I agree, but some people are putting that above and beyond any policy prescription.
But is it really a bigger issue, Chris, that the new left, which was put on steroids with Obama, has a vitriolic hatred for anything they don't like?
Yes.
And it's become a situation where either if you're duly elected or you're talking something about, free speech, anything they don't like, you're going to be shut down. And this is just basically a bigger version of the new left ideology, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Dr. Lopkin, yes or no?
Yeah, it really is. But I think Chris also made another point. They don't like him because he's not a likable person. But they've been putting that above actually doing the job for quite a while. Obama was incredibly well-spoken, but he did a horrible job.
Yeah, but no, let me ask you a question. You mentioned a very big point, and I think Chris and I have talked about it. I know Lopkin, you and I has America's mentality, especially under Obama, morphed that personalities, identity politics, social justice is bigger than results.
Yeah, it's the cult of personality. They want to look at somebody and go,
I
really like him. That's somebody I want to have dinner with.
That's always been the case. But I think with Obama, Chris, he was the greatest salesperson of all time.
Yeah, I mean, the fact
little results, and you think he's the greatest guy of all time.
The fact that he was a gifted speaker and that he was different, he had a different background. He had a different way to speak. He was obviously the first African-American president. People really embraced that, and that got him a long way, not only to getting elected, but to keep his poll numbers high. Donald Trump's the complete opposite because he's an absolute bull in a china shop. Yep. And the question will be in November and the next presidential election, are people going to vote their pocketbooks and vote because the direction of the country is going in the right way? Or is he going to lose so many points because he's a rich old white guy who is a jerk? Which is going to win out? I think at the end of the day, the policy prescription part of things will win the day because I don't have to hang out with the guy every day.
That would be like a rational train of thought, Chris. But I'm wondering...
The question is Americans rational anymore?
Is the left rational? And here's the other thing, I think. First Lopkin, then Chris. And this is not just wishful thinking. I believe that Trump's about 50% in the Rasmussen poll.
Yeah.
I think that's underreported because I think
it's
huge...
definitely underreported.
I know people that I've hung out with just say initially met, and they'll be, he's a moron, he's awful. And then I got to know them better, and they basically slowly, he's not so bad. So I think what would you say if I had a gun to your head, what do you think if the poll numbers say it's 50, what do you think it really is? First you, then Chris.
I'm going to guess it's probably closer to 68, 70%.
No, I don't think it's that high. I think it's around 55. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say 56.
I think 55.
I think he picks up 6 or 7 percentage points.
The reason I say so high is Jim Cramer recently did a story where he traveled out to the Midwest to where the story was going, and the one thing that hit him was the fact that you don't have this negativity that has permeated the media, that has permeated the two coasts. Once you leave the coasts, his approval rating is so much higher.
Okay, but that begs the question. Chris Lopkin has a good point. 860-685-7700, 685-7700, 685-7700. Are we getting to the point that it's the tale of two cities, that you have the coasts and the rest of America? Are they so diametrically opposed now it's almost ungovernable? I think it is. It's getting there. I think it is. You look at California, that's not even, is that really even, the leadership like Moonbeam, are they even representative of tradition, not even of mainstream America?
They're not, and that's how Donald Trump managed to win the election in the first place, is not because of California and New York, but rather, you've seen, I'm sure, that map where he won. I forget what the numbers are. He won the huge amount of counties. If you scored it by counties, he absolutely crushed it, but they tend to be more sparsely populated, where the Democrats and Hillary Clinton dominated the population centers, but it's fewer and far between. So yes, it is. But what I don't understand is, with what you see in the media, how do you explain consumer confidence is at a 16-year high? It's 35% higher than it was President Obama's last year in office. CNN themselves did a poll, and they scored it at an 11-year high. If things are that bad, if the resistance is that strong, if the second caller is right, How could those numbers
Well, here you have a
be
great
taking
point. You have a
place?
great question for you, then Lopkin. Is it not intellectually dishonest in some degree? Maybe people are not really telling you the truth. Maybe Lopkin could be more correct than I gave him credit for in terms of the numbers. When you see all this positive affirmations and feelings, that does this whole resistance start falling on deaf ears? I mean, if you're a person that was laid off or underemployed and now you're feeding your family or your job process, or you're a college student and 5 years ago, good luck getting a job. Now all your friends are getting jobs. Is it like, do you start shaking your, what am I resisting?
Yeah. Let's look at it this way, Jeff. Let's look at the voters' last presidential election. I don't know how many millions of people voted for Donald Trump, but of those that voted for Donald Trump, how many do you think he lost in the sense that if he ran again today, they would not vote for him?
Zero.
And how many do you think? So he didn't lose
That's a good
any.
analysis.
Would he? Do you think he has gained
He
some?
would have gained at least 10%.
Would his vote in the African American community go up
I would
slightly?
say 5%.
I think it probably would.
Well, wait. Let's talk to Lopkin. What do you think is African? Okay, if it's African American, I think maybe 5% of African Americans voted for him, which is an upswing from previous elections. What do you think the African American vote would be in 2020?
Yeah, if he got 5% last time, I'm going to guess he'd probably get 10 to 15% now, because now these folks are seeing, wait a minute, we've got jobs again.
But what happens to the left, Chris, to Lopkin's point, because they require big government. When you have a job, you don't need big government. Are they scared that their whole shtick could be over? I mean, 80 years of dependency in certain communities is no longer needed. Thank you very much.
They're petrified, and you could see it in their rhetoric. It is Armageddon when they talk about Donald Trump across a range of issues. And the second caller talking about the blue wave in November, if you're a supporter of the Democratic Party and what they believe in today, you better hope that happens in November. Otherwise, the gig is up, and the Democratic Party will be completely rebuilt from the ground up if they don't have a blue wave in November. And a lot of, especially in the Senate, it's an uphill battle for them. Of course, you can never count out the Republicans for screwing it up.
I said that to Jeff earlier.
Yeah, but let's pretend that the Republicans, let's say they lose a couple of seats. The party out of power usually loses in the House in the midterm. Let's say they lose a couple of seats, but they retain the House, and there's more weak Democrats running for Senate. Let's just say, for argument's sake, the Republicans pick up 2 or 3. And then what are the Democrats going to do? They have to win in November to carry out this policy and the way the party is being run. If they don't have a super successful November, they're going to rebuild the party from the ground up, and Nancy Pelosi will be bounced out of House leadership.
Well, speaking of rebuilding, gentlemen, it's time for us to rebuild WESU through donations. It is our pledge drive. And let's listen to a little segment on why people should go to WESUFM.org and donate.
WESU 88.1 FM, your local free-form, independent non-profit, where we play what we like and we say what we think. We're especially fond of the First Amendment. We do reggae and funk and Thelonious Monk, jazz, folk, rock and swing, just about anything. We're listener supported. We hope you make a donation. Our website is secure, or just call the station.
And yes, Chris, very patriotic. People need to go to WESUFM.org, WESUFM.org, and click the donation tab. And one last time, Chris, why should they make that donation?
Well, this show is a good example, right? Because Wesleyan has a reputation as being a more liberal school, but they welcome us at the station. They have for years, even before my involvement in the show, Jeff. And we're respectful to the callers. We get a great variety of callers from across the spectrum. I even believe we had a caller a few years ago that described themselves as an anarchist. So all comers. And that's the type of community radio delivery that's so valuable, and our show is a good example of it.
I would agree. Lopkin, would you concur with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think where else are callers even going to get a chance to voice their opinions and really make a difference?
Very interesting. And as always, the views of the Buzz are not the views of WESU or Wesleyan University. So, Chris, the resistance, where do you see this? Put your little thinking cap on and look into the future with your crystal ball. Where do you see the resistance movement in, let's say, a year, 2 years?
It's already begun to peter out, but it is...
Hold on. Lopkin, just your comment on that, and then we'll let Chris continue. Do you think it's petering out?
It is starting to peter out because they're starting to realize, oh, well, wait, things are going better now.
Excellent. Chris, sorry, continue.
No, that's okay, because for a movement to continue, regardless of the movement, you need to have success and you need to have a coherent idea to rally around. And just saying I'm against that guy is not coherent enough to sustain over the long term. And they really are having trouble coming up with success, especially because I would not give the president an F-. I don't think most Americans will, with North Korea and the economy and most Americans feeling good about the direction of the country. So it can't sustain itself.
Let's, we're closing in on the show. Let's see if our listeners, we'd love, Dr. Lockman, to hear someone from the resistance, wouldn't you?
Yes, I'd love to hear why they still think they need to resist.
And they can call in at 860-685-7700, 685-7700, and educate us on why we should be more in tune with the resistance. I think that would be a good thing. 860-685-7700. Now, you said, Chris, that Pelosi is finished. I believe if they do not succeed in overtaking the House, she is hasta nuega, baby.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, Eric, right? I mean, the politics is a win-loss game, and she has been at the helm for a while, and the Democratic Party has gotten dismantled.
Yeah, under her leadership, the party has fallen apart.
But how dumb? Dumb is dumb. You don't, even if you believe it, you don't say we're taking away your tax cut. That's going to be played in a soundbite.
Oh, of course it is.
She's not exactly a rocket scientist. And we do, speaking of rocket scientists, we have a rocket scientist on the line. Caller, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, how are we doing? What say you?
Very well. This is Greg.
Yes, how are you doing, Greg? What's going on?
Hey, I just wanted to call in and get on your show for a minute because if Barack Obama had done some of the stuff that Trump did, they would be all over him with accolades and everything else.
Accolades. They'd open up, CNN would have the tribute. They have a spin-off network called the CNN Tribute Network where it'd just be playing file footage of Obama with music in the background serenading him. I mean, so what is the disconnect? And are you concerned with the media has lost all credibility, haven't they, sir? All credibility.
I definitely believe they have, but another point I'd like to make is Obama jammed Obamacare down the Americans' throats on a Sunday. When that happened, the very next day, my wife and I went down and changed our affiliation from independent to Republican. I bet you there was a whole bunch of people that did that.
Could be. Now, let me ask you a question before we throw out to Studio B. The resistance, we talked about the resistance. What do you think the resistance is all about? And do you feel, as the studio participants in Studio B feel, that the whole resist movement is petering out because of the accomplishments of the administration?
My idea behind the resistance is basically it's the sour grapes from the Democrats. They lost. They can't get over it. So they're going to do everything they can, throw every roadblock, every impediment, every possible thing they can do to try and harangue the president and make it more difficult for him.
Do you think it's a winning strategy?
No, I definitely do not. I think it's totally counterproductive, and I think they're going to lose a lot of constituents.
Do you believe in the blue wave? Do you remember you've heard the news there's going to be a blue wave of Democratic victories in the fall? Do you agree with that?
I think it's not even going to be a pea puddle of a blue wave.
Very good. Do you have any questions for this gentleman, Studio B?
No, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I thought that was quite interesting. And
Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, excellent call. And gentlemen, as we close, Senator McCain is basically direly ill at this point. Kristen, you, then Lopkin, what do you think his legacy will be?
That's a really great question.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
Yeah. So, great American, war hero. He's a guy that flew dangerous missions in Vietnam, even though his father was a well-connected admiral in the U.S. Navy. He probably could have gotten out of that hazard duty.
He did set an aircraft carrier on fire by pressing the wrong button. But anyway, that's here nor there.
His political life is crazy because he's been all over the map. Ideologically.
He's almost erratic. And I think he's, unfortunately, I don't know, it seems to me, throw this to Lopkin, he's become a real bitter guy, a real angry guy.
He does seem to have become very bitter.
Even on his deathbed, he's talking, Palin was a mistake, and Trump, I don't want him at my funeral. Wow.
I'm really hoping that his legacy is the man that he was back in 2000 and before.
What happened to him?
I don't know what happened to him.
He became a bitter guy, and he never met a war, Chris, he never liked. It's like Philadelphia, they removed the let's bomb it. On any show. And how did he become, Chris, first you, then Lopkin? I think he was a useful idiot for the left-wing media because he was always he was a darling because he hated Trump.
It's funny you say that because we were talking about the Republicans before. The biggest problem the Republicans have in the House and the Senate is they still, despite Donald Trump's approach, which has been successful in many ways, they want to be loved by the media, who are always going to hate them unless they could use them for a time being and then discard them later when they're done with them.
I think you have a great point because I find it fascinating. Why is any Republican on Stephanopoulos, on any of those shows, Lopkin, Chris is a good point. Why would you even show up? Why?
They don't understand how to use the media. They're falling prey to the same things they've done for the last 40 years. Trump showed them, look, bypass the media, use Twitter,
but
use
also,
Facebook.
No, and attack them. Don't. If they ask you, if Stephanopoulos asks you a question, say,
stand up to them.
Yeah, say, no, that's ridiculous. Chris, that's a ridiculous question. I don't believe it. And, blah, blah. Attack them.
Yes.
Stephanopoulos, how does he even have a show? He's a Democratic operative.
Republicans should treat most of the mainstream media
as adversaries.
Like they are. Yeah, they are the opposition. They're the opposition.
Bannon was right. Wasn't it unfortunate? I really liked Bannon until he had a mental breakdown.
Yeah, I liked Bannon too, but he
lost
was a little bizarre.
He lost his mind.
He lost his mind. What happened to him?
He got to the big leagues and
it fell apart.
He couldn't handle the pressure.
Well, I think it just the fame got. He just became a megalomaniac. They had the whole wrapped up in Alabama, but it's not good enough for him. They had to get Roy Moore, a nut. He was a nut before they even came out about the pedophilia, whatever the heck.
The problem was he believed his own hype that it was the extreme right wing that was behind Trump, and the fact of the matter is, it wasn't. It was blue collar people across the country
who've been let down for years.
Yes, those are the people who were Trump's audience, not the extreme right. But he wanted the extreme right.
Absolutely, Chris. You know what I think is an interesting point, Lopkin. Last thing for Chris to get the last word. I think it's really funny because Lopkin is correct. He got the middle America, but in essence, hasn't the Democratic Party become a socialist/elitist party?
Yeah, as highlighted by they have a few bastions of support in the major population centers, the cities, and on the coast. But they're barely a nationwide party.
They're
when
a marginal
you look at
party,
geography,
a fringe party. And Lopkin, isn't it indicative of when Nancy Pelosi, as an elitist, says that the tax cut was crumbs? Was that crumbs to you?
No, first of all, you never tell somebody that when you're giving them money, it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean. Well, this means something because you need to go to WESUFM.org, press the donation tab. Gentlemen, we're closing in on another great show. Chris, final thoughts, great show or not?
It was a great show. Please support the station with its drive, and thank you so much for the excellent callers we had today.
And Lopkin, final thought.
Yeah, it's always a great show when Chris is here. You know, he just carries it.
Very good. Well, it's a team effort. Thank all of you for calling in, and thank our listeners for listening. And make sure you go to WESUFM.org and click that donation tab.